recording. Let's this.
You realize you can put that camera also on the same app, right?
I need to do that. Never.
I hope it figures out that you stole the camera. I hope it sues you. I hope the app sues you.
Okay. So
hey, that was the intro.
Yeah. So the thing is,
this Are we recording on this other thing?
Yeah,
sure.
We're recording everywhere, and the thing is, it started messing a bit with me ever since.
Which of the 20 cameras that are recording here is the one that's messing with you? Tell me.
Well, it's actually the Rodecaster. Ever since it kind of decided to do a factory reset, the button to play the music used to be here, and now it's here.
It's also a different color.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all wrong. It's all wrong. It's not even a Monday.
You know what? And let's buy another converter here because that's the only thing we can solve this problem.
Let's get a backup Rodecaster.
Yeah.
I think that's the solution.
I think you should educate everyone. There's actually not a Rodecaster. It's actually a Rodecaster.
Rodecaster. It's all this fancy equipment. I thought you were going to take it in a different direction, but that's totally okay. That's totally okay. We'll collect the data and decide from there.
Everyone listening is waiting for the brilliant bridge. That
okay, it was right there. You just blocked it. I was saying we're going to collect all the data and hopefully we can make a decision given that we trust it. It's become a thing now. Terrible segues. This is like trademark of the show.
View.
Yeah.
I think it's you.
It's me. Okay, I'm a trademark of the show.
You.
Ah, okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. But anyway, we are going to talk about data today. We've talked about it many times before.
Interesting.
Yeah. Not at all dry.
Let's talk more about data, please.
We promise you, listener, it's not going to be dry. It's actually going to be, number one, actionable. Not the data, but the conversation here and what comes out of it. And it is, in fact, going to be interesting. We've talked about data quite a few times. It's a big part of revenue operations, of really making the right decisions. But there are a couple of challenges with the data. And I think we should start delving into that piece first.
The first challenge is bad. It's bad data.
It's bad.
Bad data.
Yeah.
And
so mean.
Bad data, bad data quality and all of that stuff. And it's being thrown around most of the time, right? It's data quality as an issue is, when we talk to customers or prospects, data issue always comes up.
Yeah.
It's always like, I can't do any of these things because my data, it doesn't work out. And then we kind of look into this and we usually see that everyone is so indoctrinated because they've been slapped so many times that, your data is bad, that they're kind of running around and always like, I know my data is bad. It's that. Yeah. So, and it's actually not true in many cases. And, sometimes we will, taking through this, I think some of that we will actually touch upon later. And the reason why this is, to a large degree difficult to solve is because data quality as a problem is infinitely large, right?
Yeah.
More on this in a bit. And then, when it's really in a more applicable format, it's when you either have a report or when you have a QBR or when you do an analysis or when you maybe even do something that someone doesn't like. Then it's like, where did you get this number from?
Yeah.
I see a different number on my spreadsheet. If you have siloed ops, by the way, then the next thing is like my ops person sees a different number.
Yeah.
And actually it makes the analysis go green instead of red. So, it's super, basically what's happening is data is being opinionated, basically. And that's a problem. And then you have a bunch of just human fallacies also, in the mix, right? So what is that? Recency bias.
Yeah.
Basically, sometimes I call it's a last touch attribution.
Yeah.
It's the last piece of information that you received.
Yeah.
That's going to be the thing that you model the future or your future expectations around. And then a really good one is confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And to a degree, you almost can't fault it. But confirmation bias really means is, okay, I want to go to the left.
Yeah.
And now I'm only looking at data that confirms that I should be going to the left.
Yeah.
If I see data that says actually you should go the other direction, I'm like, I don't trust this. I don't think we can trust this. rather cherry pick this one piece here that would help me on the other side, and basically kind of making these kinds of tricks work in order to just confirm what you really want to hear.
I mean, I use confirmation bias all the time when it's anything to do with budget or salary negotiation on my behalf. It's like, you want to find that confirmation.
Yeah. I usually help you to go the other way then. But yeah, no, for example, those are things, and you could, to a degree, you could throw in groupthink.
Yeah.
You could, throw in a couple of
There's
other
a lot of
things. So
dynamics.
groupthink is really that there's a consensus building in the team, and no one is trying to argue even against it because there's so much force pulling you in one direction.
Yeah.
Which then leads you into completely crazy land.
But you know what's also really funny about data, because it's so binary, it's considered the truth. When you make real world decisions without data, you gather some of the facts and have to assess how much can I trust this piece of information. Then you end up making a decision. And somehow in those situations, often we just accept it, right? But as soon as you have data, the whole thing kind of changes because it's supposedly supposed to.
I also think there's just been an industry of 20, 30 years of, hey, data driven, that's the only way forward. And, data is the one thing you can really trust because it's, not opinionated, it's not biased. And the complicated truth is also, it's, sometimes how you even slice and dice the data, the meaning that you give to it and so forth, right? It's part of the story. So that's why I think seeing data as the end all be all for everything, I think that's also pretty stupid.
Yeah.
I think it's a mix. But if you use this instrument called data, then, ideally try and approach it in the most neutral and, intellectually honest way.
Yeah.
That's maybe kind of the better way to say it. So this is all the problem around bad data and bad data quality. And what does it actually lead to? Well, it leads to folks not trusting data.
Yeah.
This is really the end result. And when you don't trust data, especially in high stakes situations, what's going to happen is you simply won't lean on it.
No.
Yeah. It's kind of cool when you see data on a dashboard and it's like, oh yeah, woo, that's interesting. But now basically put, your career on the line for this number to be correct. It increases the stakes quite a bit. And then if there's not enough data trust in it, then it's like, you know what? I see the number going up, Mikkel, I see it, I understand it, but it's, maybe it's not enough evidence or something like that, or I'm still not sure where this is coming from, and is it really the right thing, and so forth, right? And this is then basically the reason why people then end up not using data for decision making.
It's like you have this hammer in your toolbox, but you don't really trust it because it got hurt once, and then you use a saw instead and completely breaks.
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit. So I was joking about this. So this is maybe it was a popular TV show in Germany. I don't know, 25 years ago.
Oh, we're going back. Yeah, go on.
It's like Takeshi's Castle. Is that something that you know?
Oh, is that the Japanese show?
Yeah,
I know it.
It's a Japanese game show, and they had like one game where there's like this serene lake with stones.
Yeah.
And you need to, jump from stone to stone to stone to kind of get to the other side.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. The thing is though, and you couldn't judge this obviously, some of those stones were solid, some of them weren't.
Yeah.
Right? So you couldn't know which would actually support you and which wouldn't. And it's a little bit the same here. Yeah. It's like some of the data stones are kind of solid, some of them aren't. And if you then jump on it, boom, you're in water, you're out of the game show. And I think this is fundamentally what people are really kind of struggling with, right? And kind of I think another angle to take or kind of to go about it, right? So you don't trust the data, you start second guessing it and kind of push a little bit. And especially if someone is trying to disprove you or challenge your beliefs and, going against your confirmation bias and all of that pulls you in one direction, if someone wants to change that, the first thing that's going to happen in everyone's mind is basically this typical, so this, I don't know, some, Law and Order kind of TV show on, okay, there's a trial, there's a witness, and, whoever side the witness is for, the other side is basically going to go in and try and discredit the witness.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, that person lied once. Who knows? Might lie about this right now as well. And basically, this is then the other way of how to kick this witness, in case you didn't catch it, that's the data.
Yeah.
To kick this aside is basically saying, oh, I can't trust it, right? Kind of, was wrong runs, is going to be wrong again. And that's how people kind of will then probably kind of push against that. And then if you then try and win that argument, you probably won't, because your data is wrong in many, many, many places. And since it's kind of one large thing, it's basically going to be like, well, but this data point over here in the corner that we're not talking about and haven't ever talked about, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
And therefore I can deduct that maybe this one is also wrong, right? That's how this works. And you can't win this game. You simply cannot. So how do you get out of this, Mikkel? I don't know.
Really
what should you do?
Just stop measuring. Maybe.
Yeah. Just, gut.
Yeah.
Go back to gut.
But there's the saying, if we have data, let's go with data. If we have opinions, let's go with mine.
Yeah. Who was that? Was like
I can't remember actually.
I think the Good Data CEO or something like that.
Yeah, we'll put it in the credits if we find it.
Maybe. So what we think you should be considering doing, and it's a bit of a mouthful, but we'll take you through this. But basically what we are thinking about is a system of self-validation, creating data trust, right? So creating data trust through a system of self-validation. Maybe that would be easier to say it like that, Mikkel, going forward. I'll put like a little exclamation point here.
Yeah, thank you.
But so what are these points really, right? So I think in order to get to data trust, what are the different steps you would need to go through, right? I think number one, data diet. And we can go the nutrition route. We can also go the crawl, walk, run kind of route.
Yeah.
But try and limit what you're looking at. Yeah. And I think instinctively this is what people are doing already. Everyone who needs to put a lot of pressure on the data points, that's kind of what they're doing. It's like, okay, I trust the opportunity object. Okay, I trust kind of the MQL thing. I trust closed won stuff. That's usually, by the way, then how the conversation goes. Well, I trust the people that actually paid us. That's a trustworthy data point. And the idea here is to basically, instead of looking at every single piece of data that you could think of, try and limit yourself to I would say 5 for your funnel. 5 simple steps.
Yeah.
And this could include maybe MQL, maybe your SQL. Your opportunity, closed won opportunity, of course. It could be something obviously on the renewal upsell side and so forth, right?
Yeah.
But take 5.
So core steps in the funnel, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take 5 of those and say, okay, these are the items, those are the steps in the funnel that we trust.
Yeah.
You can almost imagine like a little Twitter validated check mark that you couldn't buy, that kind of sits behind those. And then those are the 4 or 5 that you trust instinctively, right? And you will have this already right now. I can promise you that. I can tell you that the CMO will look at this MQL thing and he will trust that thing. And someone on the inside sales side will look at the opportunity count that they created and they will trust this one thing. So there's already some of these kind of pieces already built in. Where this then, becomes more so useful, but a little bit more tricky is you want to obviously, okay, this is the US, this is EMEA, right? Kind of go super soft on how many dimensions you want to add to this whole thing. Keep it super simple, right? So now that you have those volume steps that you can trust and super cross-check, and, I see 251 here and I see 251 there, and I'm going to pay commission on 251 to you, right? Kind of really to have that simplicity. Now, the next thing you kind of need to do is to connect these with one another through agreed upon ways, right? And there are really 3 processing steps or processing metrics that we advocate for. One, super easy, average contract value. I haven't seen many competing ideas how that should be calculated.
No.
Let's just say there's one. The next one is sales cycles. So how many days does it take to go from one stage to the next? There are also not so many ways to kind of think about it. A simple one is just to take the average.
Yeah.
A more complex one to take a distribution to kind of be a bit more, But you know what? Take the average. That's it. Or the median.
Yeah.
One of those 2. I don't care. One of those 2. Same for the average contract value, actually. The one where there's a lot of chatter around and sometimes confusions on conversion rate.
Yeah.
There are around 5 different ways you can calculate it. Some of them make a lot of sense, some of them don't. There's a LinkedIn post too, actually, for me, that kind of goes through this a little bit. I don't want to kind of bore everyone with this right now, but you would need to decide.
Yeah.
What is the way we're kind of calculating the conversion rate between step 1 to step 2?
Yeah.
And those calculations now, they are derivatives of your trusted main data points. So by default, they're trusted as well.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of pretty cool. You start with 5 metrics, and suddenly as you add the other pieces in, you're kind of at 15 or something like that. And that cloud of metrics is actually trusted by definition, right? Then a couple of other pieces how you can add trust to it is be very clear on the definition.
Yeah.
So it's not just a created opportunity. No, it's a meeting booked that was, I don't know, accepted and held already, something like that. That is what we're kind of measuring here. On the MQL, it needs to be in those geos. They need to have clicked this button. They need to have checked out the pricing page, whatever it is. Be extremely clear on what that means. And then the other piece is, and I think in the data world and the actual data world, not our like commercial kids version of it, they call it data lineage.
Yeah.
So where's that piece actually specifically coming from? Is it coming from Salesforce? Is it coming from kind of this field? Is it this filter and so forth?
Yeah.
So you kind of want to know that. Complications sometimes can be your data warehouse. Well, it's in the data warehouse. Okay, well, that doesn't tell me anything.
No.
So then you need to understand what's the data lineage from data warehouse to then, the source and so forth, right? Yes, so this is really on the data diet, and because it's only really 5 metrics you need to kind of monitor and understand, creating trust around those much easier than all the other stuff, right?
So what if you have a scenario where you already have a bunch of metrics that you're using, maybe even reporting on, but there's no trust? So are we really saying, well, then consider data diet? Should you just remove all the other, or put them to the side and then focus on the core?
Yes. You will still have them there for insights, monitoring reasons.
Yeah.
Maybe for yourself, maybe you trust them, but not the others. So this is really kind of creating consensus around trust around kind of the core.
Yeah.
And we'll get to adding more stuff back to it, right? This is where this crawl, walk, run analogy works a little bit better, right? Start by crawling, just a few pieces, and then later on you can always add.
Yeah.
But again, what you really don't want to have happen is you do a project. It's like, hey, there's our data quality shit lake, and you want to create this nice clean pool over here of stuff you can trust. What you really want to avoid is that that trust also gets eroded suddenly.
Yeah, it's like the first 5 stones in Takeshi's castle. You can firmly place your foot on those.
Was that the case, actually?
I don't know.
Would make sense though. But anyway, so you want to make sure that this is really trustworthy, and in order to achieve that, you want to have as little data in there that basically could kind of screw this up, right? So that's what you should start with. Then you can and should use these data points, and they very often will already be used like that, to assign owners to those metrics.
Yeah.
And that sometimes happens by way of a bonus or commission kind of agreements.
Yeah.
In some bad cases, the CMO might have an MQL target that he's being comped against. That's, by the way, some of the reason why this MQL thing is happening. A inside sales director will have the outbound opportunity piece that they're responsible for. Yada yada. There will be areas that people are commissioned against, so therefore it gets triple checked, and therefore it can then be trusted. But the other piece is also you should be assigning some of the surrounding metrics also to a owner, right? So you wouldn't pay anyone on a conversion rate, but you should make the CMO in this case the owner of the conversion metric from MQL to SAL. Right? Because, and you can disagree here, obviously, but if the CMO can decide what the definition of the MQL is and can kind of move it up and down in the funnel, and if then the conversion rate corresponds in a good or a bad way, he or she is the one that owns that, to be honest, right? And then there will everyone kind of from a marketing angle kind of listening and will be like, Well, but what if the sales guys, screw up?
Yeah.
That's why I have the SAL stage, by the way. That's actually the reason. But let's not get too deep into it. I would kind of say, out of those 15 to 20 data points that you come up with, you should try and give those to people and maybe even create goals around that.
Yeah. And maybe we can provide an anecdote because I had responsibility for the marketing number actually when we worked together last time. And I would always end of quarter run through every single closed one deal. I would also look at a ton of opportunities that weren't closed yet to see how they were distributed, right? And I would see things like, hey, this one is marked as outbound, but it clearly is an inbound. And hey, why was this opportunity closed and then opened again? And, why is person X getting all of the inbounds? It doesn't. So I think that's where you actually ensure that someone cares about that efficiency metric at the end of the day.
Yes. And so this is a really good point, right? On the one hand side, this accountability piece has this, okay, you give this number to someone and you make them care about it by maybe money.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is also once you start have someone caring about, achieving it, you will also have a person that's going to be its own little policeman or woman to make sure that that data definition and the quality of that is, as high as it should be, right?
Yeah.
So I think then the next step, right? You have some data pieces, you maybe have owners, maybe goals around it. The next step is to pressure test the whole system a little bit by using it to create a plan that leads you up to your revenue target.
Yeah.
So, surprise, the Groblos guys are talking about this, but it is extremely powerful to not just say here's a target that just hangs and you just get it. And again, people won't be comped on conversion rates. I've never seen this, and it, that's why I don't think it's going to happen. But it's super important for your funnel that your conversion rates check out, right? For many reasons. If you put the whole system now into play in order to say, okay, if we want to get to that revenue number, those would be the things we would need to do. Those would be the goals we need to set ourselves on each day, in each stage, in each kind of whatever, in order to get there. Suddenly, this whole collection of random metrics is just not so random anymore. Suddenly, there's a logic that goes through it. Suddenly it feels like, damn, if we don't do this, then we won't be able to do that, and so forth. You have all of those wonderful knock-on effects. And suddenly the whole system that you have built now is much more pressurized, right? And it's really leading again, it's not this, we need to, 4K MQLs. That's why we need 4,000 MQLs. No, we need 4,000 MQLs in order to hit this revenue target that's, down there.
Yeah.
And if we don't do that, well, we actually have a big problem here, right? So really kind of putting that pressure on the system, again, increases how many people care about it. Instead of how many people care about their one specific number, they then suddenly start also caring about the conversion rates and so forth.
Yeah.
And now getting to kind of the last piece here, and we touched upon it a little bit on the accountability part, is basically monitoring. So you have now people caring about it. You have people maybe making sure that the data is clean and proper and doesn't slide. You pressure test it with a plan. What's now going to happen is that you will have more and more people look at those numbers all the time, right? You can call it transparency. You can call it a bit tougher monitor. But that's what's going to happen. And as more people look at it, as more people that are responsible for it look at it, there will be more and more cases where someone is like, wait a minute, why did this one actually not count in?
Yeah.
Did we drop one here? Why would we drop one? Yeah. And then you kind of get into this whole making sure that these things actually kind of stay correct because things are changing all the time. And this is, now kind of getting back to this mouthful of a system of self-validation. This is what this is basically creating, right? You start very simple, data diet, easy stuff. You ditch it out to people, hey, you should be caring about this because I pay you for it. You pressure test the whole thing to connect it to a plan. Guess what? Now a lot of people will look at this, will basically now kind of enhance the data quality of the whole thing again. And you can, over time, put more and more pressure on those metrics to use them.
I think also it just reminded me of one of the cadences you and I would have is you would sometimes at this stage just send a screenshot of a graph.
Yes.
of one of those, metrics, and whether it was, overperforming, underperforming, doesn't really matter. But let's just say it was underperforming.
It was always underperforming.
Yeah. I was trying to be kind to myself. So you wouldn't have to say anything. I would already know that this was the case. I would already have plans to remedy it. And in some cases, my rebuttal would be, a graph back later showing, on track.
Yeah.
But
no, I think so. This was Tony's wonderful passive aggressive approach.
Yeah. No, but you know what? I heard of a CRO who did the same. I think he was at Divi. Weekly email. He would pull some of the graphs of their, to highlight their performance, obviously with just a couple of bullets along with it. So it is a thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not the only psychopath. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
So wonderful. Yes. Right, I think sending this screenshot in a Slack and then no other message. This was not, we're so aligned and this was like,
Cheeky.
I don't need to say it. No, this is obviously one way to go about it. And I think what happened, we created a culture that very much cared about these numbers, right?
Yeah.
And not just the revenue number, but everything leading up to it. So now we come to almost the last piece, which I think is actually pretty cool. So you have all of these things in place, your system is running, people are caring about it. Now it's actually it's much easier to add to the pool.
Yeah.
To add maybe another step. Why would you add another step in the first place? Well, number one, operationally speaking, there might be other parts of the organization that are responsible for that, right? It could be this SAL to SQL. Maybe there's an inbound rep that's responsible for that.
Yeah.
But the other reason why you might want to add, additional steps here is to have better root cause analysis, right? If your only two steps are website visitors to closed won revenue, you literally need to scream at the whole sales and marketing organization when something isn't working out.
Yeah.
As you add more steps in between, your screaming can be more nuanced, I guess.
More targeted.
Yeah. To a specific part, it's breaking here, what's going wrong here, which makes it extremely much more actionable and for you to go about it.
Yeah.
So now that we covered the why, so how now? Well, you would actually add that specific metric probably within this tree structure or this funnel structure that you have built now, right? Let's just say you only have lead and SQL and you want to add MQL into it. And this is almost two use cases. Either comes in from nowhere into being or has been there before, but the definition is changing.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost the same thing. What you will now find is that the overall conversion rate from lead to SQL will actually not change. You will add the MQL piece into it, and obviously depending on where the MQL now floats, further closer to the lead or closer to the SQL, which really means really the conversion rate steps between lead to MQL and MQL to SQL.
Yeah.
As it floats, it will actually then also dictate that your goals around the MQL need to be updated, right? You can have an assumption that the conversion rate from MQL to SQL is going to be 50%. Great. If it turns out that is actually not the case, it's actually much lower, aka it floats higher up in the funnel. I'm not sure if that makes sense for everyone. Then actually, instead of 4,000 MQLs, it's actually now 6,000 MQLs you need to create, right? And because it's now part of a system, you can less so rely on trusting that specific number. But because it's governed between, a rock and a hard place, so to agree, it's getting much easier to get to that point, right? And then as that metric finds itself, where it actually should be sitting, then the goals that you need to have come out of this in order to hit your revenue target, again, all of this thing is connected, that then also increases, right? And makes it then extremely clear for everyone around. Yeah?
So they end up trusting the witness.
So I think where this will lead you to, if you get to execute this in the right way, going back to the witness thing, I think, and I think this is where this trial thing is really interesting because it's, there is a jury sitting around.
Yeah.
And it's true, right? So really think about you sitting in an executive meeting, you're sitting in a QBR, it's not like you have a one-on-one with a person.
No.
You challenge a person maybe in a public space, immediately defense goes up, and immediately like, hey, your witness is unbelievable. But now you have this whole thing in place. It's going to be increasingly harder to discredit the data pieces.
Yeah.
Like increasingly so. And then the jury sitting around will be like, no, I think the data probably checks out.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that will happen.
Yeah.
I think what will also happen is that I call it the pause between objections.
Yeah.
Will just increase. So you present someone with data that doesn't confirm their worldviews. And now it's not going to be so easy to say like, can't trust the data.
Yeah.
It's going to be, okay, I need to now, and now I need to find something else here to say.
Yeah.
To dismiss that, right? Kind of, I think that will increase. That will be a good sign for you. And I think once you kind of get through some of those pieces, and by the way, I think one really important item not to forget is try to not even get to this point where you, have the defenses go up for someone. Try and, avoid that as much as possible. But the idea basically is to try and get this conversation to be an intellectually honest effort.
Yeah.
That's what you want to achieve. And that's, if you get to that supreme level of talking about data, I think then you're going to end up being able to leverage data really to the fullest.
Yeah.
Right? And it's kind of the top end of the pyramid.
But I think this point is so important, right? And we've talked about it before, not actually weaponizing the data. If you are responsible for actually making people trust the data, your approach really matters. So we talked about not ambushing people.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure you have a soft check-in before saying, hey, Tony, I've looked at these numbers here. They're not so great. Let's have a chat, right? So it's not an ambush in that scenario, right?
Yeah.
So there are a couple of steps to how you basically, operationally speaking, use it that matters quite a lot.
Just wrapping this up. So bad data, common stuff going on. And really what it means is people don't trust it and can't trust it for the decision making. The way you get to trust is basically by creating, number one, a data diet, then creating accountability around the few data pieces you have created. Then by putting pressure on the system, by making it part of a plan, of a revenue plan ideally. And then, as all of that ramps up, you will have more eyes on the problem, which will basically then self-validate that the data is being tracked and so forth, right? If you do all of that stuff, I think you will have a much easier time with those data quality conversations that you're going to have.
So we still haven't gotten any 500-word reviews yet.
Yeah.
I've been monitoring that daily.
Yeah.
And it ain't happening. So if you're listening to this, can we sweeten it somehow? Like, send us a screenshot, we'll send you a book. We can do that. I just decided.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's send out more books here. But yeah, no, let's totally do that. Send us a screenshot. We're going to send a book. I think that's funny and for real.
Yeah.
And then I think if we're not messing this thing up here, there will be something special happening this Thursday.
Oh, yeah, right. No, we didn't mess it up. It's all good. On Thursday, we already, I think, teased it a bit.
Yeah, but it's going to be special. Let's not talk about it.
Okay. Watch your podcast feed, I guess.
Yes, and the big question is, why is there Toblerone?
Yeah. Answer that question. Well, I don't want to be bothered sending Toblerones.
No.
Okay, let's just end it here. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Tony.
Bye-bye.
Bye.